Well, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is likely facing some tough questions, right about now. On a conference call with Canada's premiers, Saskatchewan and Ontario are particularly concerned about exactly when Canada will start receiving a vaccine. Yesterday, Premier Scott Moe said the federal government isn't providing any answers on their vaccine plan. Today, federal officials did provide some new details, as we've been discussing. They said if all goes well, 6 million doses could arrive in Canada in the first 3 months of 2021. So, is that good enough? Scott Moe is the Premier of Saskatchewan. We reached him in Shelbrook, Saskatchewan. Welcome back to the program, Premier.
Thanks so much, Catherine.
Federal officials said today that Canada could make decisions about approving these vaccines at essentially the same time as the United States FDA. European officials, they reiterated that vaccines could arrive in this country in January, that it's even possible that it will happen sooner. Does that satisfy some of the concerns that you've been expressing?
Yes, if they can clarify how many vaccines will be here and then precisely ultimately when those vaccines are going to be dispersed to the provinces so that we can get on with our vaccination program. So the questions Canadians have, the questions premiers have is how many and when?
Well, the information that was repeated today, and I believe it has been made public before, is presuming, and of course we always have to say that there are big caveats around this. They're these two most promising candidates. We don't know if they're going to be approved, but presuming they are approved, 6 million doses in the first 3 months of the year. Of course, all of the vaccines, I think a lot of Canadians know, I'm certain you know, require 2 doses. So 3 million people, 3 million Canadians could be vaccinated within the first 3 months of the year. That is information that's been discussed before. Again, is that satisfactory to you?
That's been information that has been discussed, and then it's actually over the course of the past week, we've seen officials and the Prime Minister start to back away from the fact that those actual vaccines are going to be available, let's say, as you said, in early January. Listen, all we're asking for is, all leaders, and I think in fairness, all leaders have been as transparent as possible through this entire COVID outbreak. And where they need to be more transparent, they've taken the action to do so in the days post whenever that request is. And that's what we're asking for here is Canadians want to know, when are we going to have access to this vaccine? How many doses are we going to have access to, and how quickly can we get it out? Most importantly, to our most vulnerable populations, our healthcare workers, about how quickly can we get large amounts of this vaccine out? That is what the Prime Minister had committed to on September the 25th in his news release, is that they have procured vaccines, and now we're just asking him and the federal government to be transparent in when and how much.
I want to dig into the Prime Minister's comments this week in just a moment, but I just want to be crystal clear. The information that was repeated today, that it looks like January could be sooner, 6 million doses, you are satisfied with all that information?
That isn't by near enough doses for all the Canadians. That's a 2-dose system, so that would treat 3 million Canadians.
In the first quarter, yes.
If that, no one is committed that will be on the ground here in January. If that is the case, that would be a good start, and we would look obviously for more doses to be distributed across Canada in the weeks post that. We're hearing other countries are going to be having fairly large vaccination programs early in the first quarter, and what we are asking the federal government for is, and this is their lane, is to procure these vaccines for Canadians, is how much are we going to have and how soon can we get it in the hands of Canadians?
I want to ask you about something that you said specifically. You said you were, quote, quite troubled to hear the Prime Minister's comments yesterday that Canada may be at the back of the line when it comes to receiving the vaccine. I mean, you mentioned it a moment ago. There are a few countries that produce these complex mRNA vaccines. We're talking about the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany. That is not really the back of the line. And then you have federal officials saying today, again, it's likely that we're going to have this in January. We might even have it sooner. Is it really responsible to be telling Canadians and people in your province that we're at the back of the line?
Yeah, that is our concern, is that we are at the back of the line.
But we're after a handful of countries, is what we're being told by federal officials. That's not the back of the line.
That's not what the Prime Minister had said this weekend. His Prime Minister was much more vague with his comments this weekend. The officials that were out today did try to clarify that there is those 6 million doses that would be available, and that they did. I don't know if they committed to those being available in January, but they did say that they would be attempting to procure those as soon as possible. Well, we want to know when the contracts are there, and the officials that said the contracts were there today. that we want to know when those vaccines are going to be available to be distributed to the provinces. And what I heard from the officials today was in order to protect the negotiating position, they aren't actually able to disclose that information. And then they talked about a notional delivery schedule. That's concerning to me. It is concerning that we are heading towards the back of the line in our access to these vaccines. And I expected better.
I still don't understand what puts us at the back of the line, Premier. Like, I'm not saying we're at the front of the line. I don't think anyone is saying we're at the front of the line. But it does seem to be a handful of countries that are talking about December, and Canada is talking about January. So how do you get from there to the back of the line?
I did not hear Canada talking about January. If they are, that is positive. The fact of the matter is I think the Prime Minister and the federal government should clarify where we are in the line, where we are with these first 3 million Canadians that can be vaccinated and how that will be distributed, and when the other 33 million Canadians can expect access to this vaccine as well.
You have made this back of the line comment in the past 24 hours, so has Premier Ford. We're talking to you right before your meeting by phone with the Prime Minister that's obviously going to be focused on vaccination today. I mean, my sense is that's going to be a bit of a tough meeting if both you and the Premier of Ontario are essentially calling out the federal government. What are you expecting going into this?
I'm expecting the Prime Minister to clarify where we are in the line. That is the question that I think Canadians want to know. Are we going to be able to procure and access these vaccines, and how many in January, in February, in March, in April? When can Canadians expect to have these vaccines in their communities and start treating our families? This is all of the restrictions, all of the conversation around COVID is heading towards access to this vaccine. The sooner that we can have access to this vaccine in a large scale, the better. And that is what we were asking the Prime Minister. He had indicated that they had the most fulsome suite of access to vaccines on September the 25th. What we're asking now is when can we expect those vaccines, and in what quantities can the provinces expect those vaccines so that we can distribute them through our healthcare systems to all Canadians.
I want to close by asking you about that particular issue, the dividing up of the vaccines. Will you be satisfied with a per capita division, or do you think that it should be based on which province has the greatest number of elderly, or where, for instance, COVID cases are worse?
Well, the quickest and easiest to get it out to all Canadians is a per capita system. We use that in multiple other areas. It's the quickest, it's the simplest. I'm sure there'll be a discussion on that here this afternoon. Saskatchewan will be supportive of a per capita. But more importantly, what we need is to ensure that we are gaining access to these vaccines through procurement, because we do not have any manufacturing facilities or capacity here within our borders. Hopefully we will in a not too distant future. But so we do need access to these vaccines, and we're asking the federal government to clarify for all Canadians when that will occur. It's not a hard question.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much for your time, Premier.
Thank you, Kathy.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.